Hello, and welcome to another edition of Ask the Professor, where we respond to your questions on everything from history and political philosophy to contemporary cultural matters. If you're enjoying the feature, please go to my website, that's www.johnrobson.ca, and make a contribution to help keep these commentaries coming.
All right, here's a question from Isabel who's asking about languages and specifically homonyms. And she says, I get that different words derive from different sources and we have spelling that reflects those differences, but she's really wondering about the development of homonyms. Before there was written language, she says, did people use the same sound to mean different things, relying on context for clarity, or did we only develop this oral overlap after we developed written language? In that case, are homonyms the result of a feedback loop between the spoken and the written language? Good luck.
I have no idea. But that's never stopped me before,
No, sir.
and it's not going to stop me now. So let me try and think through this. In the first place, I am almost certain that homonyms antedate written language by a very long time. For one thing, there are only so many sounds. I mean, how many sounds, particularly, do you think that cavemen had? They had oog and ugh and and gug. And presumably they had to give them context with gestures. And I mean, there's a lot of language that clearly arises from imitating the thing. For instance, the word bee. I love the word bee, right? But this is because some cave person went bee. He was imitating the sound the thing makes. Now, there is another thing that occurred to me in thinking about this, and that is that when you look at the development of writing, very early on, the first thing you do is you have a different picture for each word. But this requires you to master an enormously complex alphabet to do anything. I use the term alphabet loosely. And then you get syllabic writing, where you will take short common words. I mean, for instance, in Sumerian, if memory serves me, a fish was called ha. And so you do a picture of a fish to mean not a fish, but to represent the sound ha. And then you can use that anywhere it appears, which brings me back to the point there are only so many sounds. There's no point in having syllabic writing if you don't have ha's turning up all over the place. And even once you start combining syllables, you get a lot of possibilities, but you don't get so many that there won't be the same sound used for different ideas, especially when cultures meet and you find different people who talk differently, and then the words start to mix together in the languages, and context has to separate out for you which one you're talking about. And this is reinforced by an interesting point about alphabetic writing, especially in English, where you might think that the spelling system was specifically designed to drive foreigners insane. English, in fact, is very welcoming to new speakers of the language. It's a pidgin, it's a trader's language from open societies. But at the same time, once you start trying to get everything down, you discover that a lot of the details are a nightmare, including different spellings of words like night. And you wonder, why on earth do we tolerate this? Why don't we simplify our spelling, as zealots and projectors have wanted to do from practically the time the pen was first taken in human hand? And part of the answer is that having different homonyms spelled differently helps you tell them apart on the printed page. It actually makes it easier to read. But you wouldn't have this system if homonyms were not a common feature in language. If they were very rare, people would presumably have eliminated them. They said, oh, I hate that. That's really in the way. We've only got 3 or 4 of these things. Let's come up with a new word. But they didn't do that. And that makes me think that they must be embedded very, very deeply in the language. Writing, remember, is a very recent invention, although printing is more recent still. I mean, the Gutenberg and his printing press only come along in the late 15th century, and we've had writing in one form or another since about 3000 BC. But anatomically modern humans have existed for 100,000 years. For the vast majority of our history, we were hunter-gatherers and we were not literate, and yet we were talking. It's clearly one of the things that separates us apart, not merely from the rest of the animal kingdom, but also from our ancestors.
Stories. We tell stories.
And we were telling stories, and we were doing a lot of oohs and ahs, and in the process, you had this ooh and that ooh and the other ooh. I'm sure it must have been that way. So there you go. Although I have no real detailed knowledge of what Cro-Magnon was going around grunting. No, see,
Come on, you can imagine it, right?
Cro-Magnons and Neanderthals didn't grunt. They spoke in a very sophisticated way. We have this image, Chesterton talks about this in The Everlasting Man, that somehow our ancestors must have been hopelessly crude, stumbling boobs. People are always amazed when they find that Neanderthals were agile. Scientists are announcing Neanderthals are agile. I want to see you hunt a mammoth before you mock them. But in fact, cave art has a good deal of sophistication right from the beginning, and you can be very sure, especially in a non-literate culture, that speech and proficiency at speech and a good memory for tales and a vivid narrative style would have been a part of the experience of the human race going back way far past the gathering of the mists of time. And so I'm sure that they not only had homonyms, I'm sure they had puns.
Yeah, and those words that are spelled one way but pronounced the other, speaking as someone who's learned English as a second language as an adult, why put an L in salmon if you're not going to say it?
Well, I like that, considering that in French you don't pronounce the second half of 3/4 of the words. But
That's not the same.
yeah, the old
It's to
silent
keep,
X.
yeah, it's just so we can tell the foreigners, yes, I can see that. And it works. Yeah, and languages are tools that way,
At
right?
any rate, we're homo homonym. How do you like that?
Not sure I do. But thanks for that. Thanks for taking a stab at it. Folks, if you would like to play along and ask your question of the professor, maybe about something a little easier next time, you have the URL on your screen, and it will take you to a page where everything is explained. Thank you, and see you next time.